Hey, it's David Weiner, director of In Search of Darkness, and you are listening to Scarifyer.
To a new world of gods and monsters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scarifyer. I am the Gov.
And I'm Quinn. And today for you, we have a very special guest with us today, David Weiner. David, how are you doing today?
I am good and happy to be with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. You're out in California right now, correct?
I am in Los Angeles, and we have kind of an overcast, rainy day, which is few and far between. So it's, as a person from the East Coast, actually originally from New York, like you guys, any inclement weather makes me happy.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but you're from this area originally, like you were born and raised in New York?
Yeah, born and raised in New York, in Westchester County, and I live there. I have a Chicago. My parents are originally from Chicago, but I was born and raised in New York. And halfway through high school, my parents moved back to Chicago, and so they've been a Chicago family ever since. But I stuck around in New York. I went to school in Western Massachusetts, actually, to a wonderful school called Berkshire, and then I went to Ithaca College in upstate New York to film school. So. Without diving into my whole biography, I went to film school and then I headed west and I stayed in Los Angeles ever since.
So when you went to Ithaca, is that what you studied? You studied film? Because literally Ithaca is 3 hours away from us.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted to be close to you guys. I wanted to go to film school. I was very lucky at an early age that I always knew what I wanted to do. I really sort of honed that in when I was in high school. I figured, is this what I really want to do? Absolutely. I ran a film club when I was in high school.
Nice.
This is back in the day when we would get 16 millimeter films of feature films. And not only would I run the film club and show everything from Mad Max to A Clockwork Orange to who knows what, but I would also, since I would get these ahead of time and we didn't have TVs in our rooms, I was at a boarding school. So I would get these film reels and I'd show them on the wall in my dorm, and everyone would come and watch movies before I'd show it for the rest of the school. So it was really fun.
Did you charge admission?
I not to my room, but to the to the school screening I did. And it's actually funny that you asked that because I thought it was pretty reasonable. But I think I charged $2. And you would be shocked at how many people showed up and said, I don't have any money. Can you let me in? And I was so nice in the very beginning. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Just pay me. Like, yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks. And then I found myself chasing after people for $2, like in Better Off Dead, like John Cusack, the John Cusack movie. And I got so tired of going $2 to all my friends, I would not let anyone in unless they gave me collateral. They either had to give me the money or collateral. And the irony, and this is a story I don't think anyone's ever heard, is that people, they would give me Swatch watches and Varney glasses and cassette tapes and lacrosse sticks and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I didn't want this stuff. I'm like, take it back. It only cost me $2. And the whole year would go by. And I'm like, I have a box full of stuff. I don't want them. Do you? $2 only. And I'd name these people. And literally at the end of the year, I said, if you don't claim them, I'm just going to keep them. And that's how I got my Swatch watch. That's how I got my Varneys. That's how I got my lacrosse stick.
Well, then I got to ask, what is the weirdest bit of collateral you collected?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one of the best pieces. Well, a bridge, someone's teeth. No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
No, the best piece of collateral that I held on to was a UB40 tape. It was one of the UB40. It was a UB40 album that's only called UB40, and I had never heard that one before. I'm a big fan of UB40, and that became one of my favorite UB40 albums. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have it?
Well, it's a cassette. I'm sure it's gathering dust. I probably do because I have my cassette tapes all sitting in the garage, waiting for their day to shine one day again. But yeah, I think I do.
That's really cool, though. I love watching people's face, literally, because I still have cassette tapes from when I was growing up, and I remember literally a girl that just got out of high school that I was working with, because I was doing like an exchange with another girl that I was working with, and she's like, well, where do you plug in the headphones for it? I'm like, okay.
Oh, there, yeah. Well, hand
It aged
someone an 8-track tape, and they'll have no idea what to do with it.
They'll just like stare at it for the longest time.
My favorite is watching these videos of the. I feel like an old geezer telling everyone to get off my lawn, but these videos of people looking at a rotary phone, and they say, okay, make a phone call, and they just it's like monkeys scratching their head like, I know I can crack this. Where's the hack? Look it up on YouTube.
Exactly. I watched one of those. She was like almost in tears. She's like, there's no buttons. I just wanted to reach through the screen and just be like, you just turn it. Just like
although you look at it though, because they figured out that you turn it, but they did not figure out how to dial it. And I understand why it's not intuitive. It's just something that has to be, it's not hard, but it's something that has to be taught. And if you're not taught that, I can definitely understand why you just wouldn't get to that final that final step of making a call. Because even after you dial the number, how do you press send? I don't understand.
Okay, so you touched upon how at an early age you knew you wanted to be a filmmaker. I have to ask.
These are the important things, by the way. I'm quite enjoying talking about dated references. So, anyway.
You know what? That's what we're about. So, was there a specific movie that made you decide that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah, it's the cliche one, but I can't speak any other name than Star Wars.
It's always Star Wars, yeah.
Well, what made Star Wars so special to me is I was 9 years old. And so Star Wars came out, and I knew I wanted to see it. I was a big Star Trek fan. I was a big sci-fi fan. I watched a lot of, Planet of the Apes and all sorts of things on TV and things like that. And Star Wars comes out, and I knew I wanted to see it. And I went to go see it, and I was so blown away. My expectations were high, but I was young, and it was just magic beginning to end. I was lost in that world and swept away. And the difference is rather than, in comparison to other films that I had seen, where I really enjoyed the film, and I said, great, I want to see that again, or I had such a fun time watching that. This made me want to make movies myself. This made me want to understand how movies were made. This made me wanted to share the exhilaration I felt walking out of that theater and create something of my own that would make people feel as excited and happy and overwhelmed in joy that I felt. It really was that sensational. And after that put me on a pathway of learning about film and learning how films were made. And it obviously progressed from there. And it was a long road, but it was a happy road because now I was into movies, and I never looked back.
I'm telling you, Star Wars is one of those films that it's so inspirational for almost everyone that I've talked to that has seen it, that I don't even know if we still have movies that are that impactful anymore. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it has to do with the age. I think a kid who's 10 years old can walk in and see Avengers Endgame, and their jaw will drop, and they'll just say, "There's nothing better than this ever made in the history of movies," and they would be right for them.
True.
There's a certain age, I think, when you're anywhere between 8 and 9 and 14 and 15, that seems to be like a magic sort of time in your life when you really dial into the things that you're into, and when you see these things, they make such an impact, and you want to know everything about it and revisit them over and over and over. And as the years go by, when you go back and you look at all the things that you've experienced, whether it's music or books or movies or plays or just times in your life, there's something real magical about that certain age where things have so much more impact, and the nostalgia is incredibly strong.
Yeah. Gosh. So a question that I really am curious about, because I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be a little bit of a nerd right now, so excuse me.
You never.
I know. I am a humongous Mel Brooks fan. Like, I was brought up with his movies. I love him so much. And I heard that you actually won an award for an interview that you did with him.
That is correct.
What is he like? I am dying to know. Please tell us about that.
But before we dive into that, we feel now is the best time to tell you that Scarifyer are proud supporters of Rue Morgue. Rue Morgue is the world's leading horror and culture and entertainment brand, spearheaded by its multiple award-winning magazine, Rue Morgue and Rue Morgue Digital. But if reading's not your thing, that's okay, because there's Rue Morgue TV, the official YouTube channel, as well as Rue Morgue Cinema, which produced the acclaimed original film The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Lee. So head over to ruemorgue.com and subscribe to Rue Morgue magazine for your bi-monthly slice of horror culture and entertainment today.
Well, I've spoken to him twice, and the first time I was with Entertainment Tonight, and the second time I was with Famous Monsters of Filmland. And first of all, he's extremely entertaining. And the first time I ever spoke to him, he was chewing on a cinnamon raisin bagel, and he said, "David, sorry, you're gonna have to listen to me eating and he not only did he not let me interview him for the first 5 minutes, he started asking questions about me. So, all right, Entertainment Tonight, that's good. So, why are you at Entertainment Tonight? What do you do? Who are you? Who's David Weiner?" And he just wanted to know who I was, and I just said, my parents took me to see, Young Frankenstein in the theater, and I've been a fan ever since, and this, that, and the other thing, and this is what I do. Good, okay. Oh, where did they take you? Where did they take you? I mean, he really wanted to know, and I had this wonderful conversation with him where we were only supposed to speak for about 15 minutes or so. And he gave me 45 minutes of his time.
Wow.
And the way he ended it is just like, okay, well, my assistant says I got to go. I needed to go like a half hour ago. Okay, so you get one more question, and then that's it. Bye. We're done. And then I was doing I was writing a piece for Famous Monsters about a piece for Famous Monsters about Young Frankenstein. And I was able to get, in touch with him again, and they gave me like 20 minutes of his time, and 45 minutes later, he gave me the world. And he's a mensch, and he's a wonderful guy. He's very entertaining. He's a braggadocio, but he's also humble and self-effacing. It's just very entertaining, and he's everything you would expect from Mel Brooks. And I think on top of all that, the fact that when I spoke to him, he was in his high 80s. He's rounding 90s, and he sounded like he was 20 years younger. He had so much energy. Maybe it was from that, that raisin and cinnamon bagel. I don't know.
So, what led you to that point? I mean, you how did you get involved with Famous Monsters of Filmland, which is, in my opinion, the greatest horror magazine that ever was?
Oh, good. I'm glad you love Famous Monsters.
Oh, big
time.
Famous
Monsters I loved ever since I was a kid. And I was just always a big fan of Famous Monsters. And when I moved out to California, I had been out here for a couple of years, and I learned that Forrest J. Ackerman, who ran the magazine, he was the editor. He still opened up his home, the Acker Mansion in the Hollywood Hills, to anyone who wanted to go and tour his collection of stuff. And he did that. He was the only guy. This sounds like an incredible exaggeration. He put his personal phone number in the magazine.
Oh, wow.
And said, he said, call me. And so fans would call all the time, and he'd pick up the phone and he'd have conversations with fans all the time. His direct line. No one does that anymore. No one ever did that, I don't think.
Wow.
But he would also open his home for people to tour as well and look at his collection. And so I got to do that as well. Now, cut to years later, and I was working as an online journalist at Entertainment Tonight. As a, I was doing entertainment news. I was doing tabloid news, which I was not a big fan of. But for every celebrity DUI and divorce and marriage and wedding and death, I got to do really fun stuff. I got to visit sets, and I got to do junkets and red carpets and all that stuff. And that leads into, I was doing Star Trek Into Darkness came out, and it was actually about to come out, and they had this 3-day junket at Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' production company. And I got to see clips of the movie. I got to rub elbows with JJ and the cast.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do, the junket on the 3rd day. And I remember after that junket, I raced to a screening of The Hobbit. And standing in line, there was a guy with a Famous Monsters sweatshirt. And I said, oh, cool, nice sweatshirt. And he's like, oh, thanks. And I said, I could have just ended it there, but I just said, Famous Monsters, that was like my favorite magazine when I was a kid. He's like, oh, really? He's like, what do you do? I said, well, I'm at Entertainment Tonight, and I just was at a Star Trek junket and blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, I'm the editor of Famous Monsters. My name's Ed. Nice to meet you. So
wow.
Star Trek, huh? Well, I've been looking for someone to write an article bridging the series with the new JJ movies. How would you write it? How would you like to write it? And I just said, I would write for a magazine that I loved as a kid. Twist my arm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of put me on the path right there. And I interviewed JJ for it, and I wrote a bunch of things freelance while I was still at Entertainment Tonight. And long story short, when I left Entertainment Tonight, they asked me to come work for them. And I worked as their managing editor for an issue. And next thing I knew, I was the executive editor. And it was quite the experience. And it was just like a dream come true.
Wow, that's super amazing.
That's
dude.
the short version.
So what about that job what are the things you took from it?
Well, first of all, I've come to realize that I really thrive in a small company environment.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Entertainment Tonight, I was just like a wheel in the cog,
right?
Or a cog in the system, a wheel in the cog in the system of the wheels of the gears. But working at a small company, I found that you get a lot more wonderful, not only responsibility, but creative opportunities. And so writing for them, I could just pitch stories and they said, that sounds great. And I'd get to meet people and I'd write about them. And, the Rondo Award came my way. I never was, shooting for a Rondo Award. So how amazing is that I get a Rondo Award for?
Exactly.
I could deal with Mel Brooks. But that's just the icing on the cake, because for me, this magazine was handed to me almost like a blank canvas. The publisher, Phil Kim, gave me this wonderful chance, and he said, "I'd like you to edit the magazine." This is when Ed, who had given me a great responsibility, Ed Blair, he was moving on from the company, and so Phil said, do what you want with the magazine. What would you do? And I kind of pitched that I wanted to do a balance of new and old, of new and nostalgic, of new material to sort of hook the people who aren't really familiar with Famous Monsters, and a lot of nostalgia for the people who've loved the magazine for decades. And I did kind of a reorganization, and it was very important for me to also up the marquee value of the types of names that were coming to Famous Monsters. So within a small company, I could do all this, and I was given the encouragement and the resources to do it. The next thing I know, I'm interviewing, Mark Hamill and, James Cameron and just amazing folks who all were happy to come to the magazine.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the magazine has such a lineage.
Indeed. It's been around since 1958. And a lot of the old school fans really want it to be like how it used to be, but Forey Ackerman had passed on, and I would never try to be like Forey Ackerman. And I think when people were trying to be like Forey Ackerman, if they knew anything about the magazine, they knew that there was a bit of imposter syndrome going on. Whereas I felt if I could sort of, draft on the vibe of the nostalgia and include, sort of retro pieces and classic, film monsters in there, along with retrospective articles looking back at, movies on their anniversary or TV shows on their anniversary, as well as the contemporary stuff as it was coming out, just sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and pop culture, not just monsters. So we could do, Star Trek Into Darkness. We could do Game of Thrones. We could do, Captain America Civil War or Batman versus Superman. And I could talk to Zack Snyder, or I could talk to the Russo brothers, because it fit. Hand in hand, doing stuff with Clash of the Titans would be having its anniversary, so I could talk to Harry Hamlin, about that, or talk about Logan's Run, with Michael York and And that was just absolute highlights for me, and I got to do whatever I wanted as long as I was working within my microscopic budget, and so. It was an absolute thrill, and like American Werewolf in London was turning 35, and I literally got to reunite the entire cast. So I got Jenny Agutter, I got David Naughton, I got Griffin Dunn, who wasn't doing really any interviews about that stuff. I got John Landis, and I got Rick Baker, and I put them all together in the pages. And the way I was able to get Griffin Dunn was John Landis like, "Oh, you should talk to Griffin. Have you talked to him yet?" I'm like, "Well, I can't really get in touch with him." "Oh, I'll give him a call. Tell me if you don't hear from him." Next day, Griffin's like, "Hey, let's talk." So, serendipitous moments would happen with this magazine, and it's all because of everyone having just a love for the genre.
No, but that's actually wonderful. That's that perfect balance between interests, a little bit of everything for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what he said, just not just monsters.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something, like I said, I'm going to repeat myself, for a little bit of everybody, but that's perfect. That's what people want. And if it's something that they don't know about, it's right there for you. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I did a couple things just to sort of, because we were on the newsstand at Barnes & Noble. And so we would do two different covers. We would have the subscriber cover, and we'd have the newsstand cover. And so for the subscriber cover, I would always do artwork that was more nostalgic and retro and the older films. Whereas the newsstand cover, more often than not, I would do the more contemporary stuff, Suicide Squad, or, the new Star Trek movie, or whatever it would be. The new Star Wars and Force Awakens, I'd put that on there. Because I put this little line at the top that said, what did it say? It said pop culture, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. And I figured, people... I learned very quickly when I was trying to lock down J.J. Abrams. Even though I literally just was speaking with him at a party, I knew that I couldn't just give his office a call and just say I want to talk to him for Famous Monsters, because it was kind of crossing the stream, because I was with Entertainment Tonight. So I was going the way of publicity, and I realized I was talking to these early 20s publicists who'd be like, "Oh, Famous Monsters. Well, that's great. Well, if there's a monster movie coming, we'd definitely be, we'll get in touch." And I'm like, "Well, no, I don't think you understand what the magazine's about.
Right.
It's more than just monsters. It's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's horror, it's pop culture. It's more of a concept than taking literally." I had to convince Disney of the same fact. I mean, I literally had to take the Disney publicist out to coffee and show him the magazine and say, I know you've never heard of this, but J.J. Abrams, who's directing The Force Awakens, is a huge fan of Famous Monsters. And it's one of his motivations from when he was a kid. Same thing with Spielberg, same thing with Lucas, same thing with Stephen King. All these people read, when they were young, Famous Monsters, and it definitely helped move their career forward. And I could tell you a very long story short is, we were going to do, Force Awakens was coming out very soon. And I realized as the editor of the magazine, I was failing because I couldn't get anyone from the film. And I was doing a cover story and I was doing all this material on it. And I realized I had no one from the film, and I was kicking myself. I'm like, oh, and I told the guy, the Disney publicist, I said, listen, the stormtrooper third from the left in that second scene, can I at least talk to that person? Like, I need someone, just some mouthpiece from the movie. And as time was ticking closer to our deadline, I reached out to, in a very strategic way, to Mark Hamill outside of that sort of bubble. And long story short, Mark Hamill, who was a huge fan of Famous Monsters, got back in touch and said, and next thing I know, the publicist from Disney called me and they said, I've got Mark Hamill. Would you like to speak with him? And I said, why, yes, I would, with like 2 days left before I was supposed to deliver my piece. Wow. And that publicist had to eat crow listening to us talk for 45 minutes. It's always 45 minutes, right?
Right.
To 45 minutes because, Mark Hamill was just like, Famous Monsters was the magazine that is responsible for my career. Because it showed me, after I was a huge fan of King Kong, which was my Star Wars, that I really want to be, that I could have a career in entertainment and in the movies. And that there's things that you could do rather than just watch movies. You could be part of it and you could make them. And he's like, I wanted to pay it back to Famous Monsters. And I was just like, well, thanks, Mark.
Oh, wow.
No,
and then 2 days later, I'm my deadline is literally within hours, and I'm madly transcribing his interview and writing it. I get another call from the same Disney publicist. He's like, David, sorry to bother you, but Mark Hamill wants to talk to you again. Are you available? And my first thought was, no, I'm not. I'm way too busy. But I'm like, well, yeah, of course. But yeah, Mark, he's like, oh, I can't believe I totally forgot. And I really wanted to give you guys something different and unique that no one else had. And I wanted to tell you about this one thing. This J.J. Abrams gave me this birthday gift. And it was a original prop from the original King Kong. I'm looking at it right now, right in front of me. I'm looking at the back of it. It says, property of RKO Studios. And anyway, it was a wonderful gesture on his part. And I have lots of these wonderful tales that I could tell.
Oh, wow. So, one of the other questions that I had for you is, obviously we're a horror-themed podcast, so In Search of Darkness is
a big deal.
A big deal. I know everyone's buzzing about it right now. So, I am curious, though, what led to that documentary? What started it?
All credit for how this whole thing started goes to Robin Block, who's the executive producer of In Search of Darkness, In Search of Darkness 2, In Search of the Last Action Heroes, In Search of Tomorrow, our sci-fi movie that we're making right now. He looked at this decade as a fan of horror movies, and he said, I don't think anyone's covered the decade. They've covered genres, films, subgenres, but they haven't the history of the entire, of horror. But no one really seems to be focusing on just this decade. Let's do this movie by movie. And I was able to connect with him through a friend of mine, Jessica Dwyer, who writes for Horror Hound and various other things. And she wrote for me for Famous Monsters, and that's how I knew her, because we met on the set of The Conjuring 2. And she connected me with Robin, and Robin gave me yet again another wonderful opportunity. That's the word I use over and over, opportunity. I destroy that word because that's all I think about. I get these great opportunities, and if you can make something out of it, then all the better in your life. And so decided to make this film where I would structure it from 1980 to 1989 with sort of larger context chapters in between and go movie by movie. And we never set out to make a 4.5-hour film, but quickly realized that the structure just demanded it, especially when kind of touting it as the definitive, movie of 80s horror. I felt like that was a lot to live up to, and knew that we couldn't quite do it, but I wanted to cover as much ground as possible with the hopes that one day, with all this material, getting, 50 people, 50 interviews where, each interview is like an hour or 2 hours or more, a wealth of material that hopefully we can maybe even continue the series one day. And so here we are, post In Search of Darkness 2 with In Search of Darkness 3 announced, and so happy that a whole new audience is discovering it on Shudder and using it as this jumping off point to discover the entire decade, and revisit movies that they loved, recontextualize movies that they weren't entirely sure if they liked or not, but want to give it another go, and sharing their love when they discover a new movie that they discovered on In Search of Darkness, and they could share it with their friends.
Well, real quick, I just want to say that Whorehound is second only to Famous Monsters, in my opinion. And then one of the things I loved about the documentary is that, I don't know if it was in your guys' mind, but like it reminded me of the old VH1 I Love the 80s docuseries. Right. And that's where I was like, this is perfect.
It's an awesome style.
It's going step by step through these movies, and one of the things I appreciated, much more so in part 2, is the deep cut ones, the horror movies that people don't hear about, the non-Halloweens, the non-Friday the 13th, and stuff like that.
Right. Well, that was I got a lot of flack from the hardcore fans for the first one.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's been wonderful having such a positive and warm response. But there were definitely people who were disappointed because they wanted the film that they believed that they should get. And I understand that completely. And the balance for me was very difficult because I wanted to create this massive film that also it ingratiated newcomers so they wouldn't be intimidated. For the casual fan, they could discover new things. And for the hardcore fans, ideally they would reinforce what they knew. And ideally they would discover, if not some new films, some new insights about films.
Right.
But what's unique about this film and this documentary, compared to a lot of other similar types of efforts, is that you have a large number of people not only talking about their own projects, but talking about other projects that they love. Where else are you going to find, Joe Dante talking about how much he loves, the Chiodo Brothers and Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Exactly.
And so I liken it to this big conversation where at the end of the day, you're at a bar, you're in the back of the bar at this table with the cool folks and the people who made these movies. And they close down the bar, but you get to stay there for another 4 hours, and you get to have drinks and hear stories no one's ever heard before. And it's just an enjoyable experience, and it's a big love letter to the genre. And the fact that we got to do a part 2 gave me the opportunity to go into the deeper cuts, gave me the opportunity to do more international films and Italian giallo and all that stuff. I never crossed my mind to talk to Shinya Tsukamoto, the director of Tetsuo, for the first one. But for the second one, I'm like, now we can cast a wider net. And by all means, let's see if he wants to talk to us.
All right, the Gov is going to tell you real quick how to bring the horror into your own home with a handmade soy wax candle from American Nightmare Candle Company. The scents are inspired by locations iconic to the horror genre, places like the Overlook Hotel, Sleepy Hollow, and Elm Street. Each fragrance combination is carefully curated to transport you into the story, and the catalog is ever evolving. So head over to Etsy or to AmericanNightmareCandles.com and get 10% off when you use the code Scarifyer at checkout. This deal only makes sense, so get your American Nightmare candle today. Now, did you have an opportunity to go back for the second one? Like, was there... I guess what I'm asking is, like, the timing of filming it, was there COVID restrictions, or did you already have some stuff in the can?
Both.
Okay.
So there was a lot of, if you think about it, I interviewed, I think, 47 people for the first movie, for In Search of Darkness Part 1. And I spoke to everyone, whether it was 45 minutes with John Carpenter or, 90 minutes with Joe Dante or 3 hours with Alex Winter, and it just ran the gamut. I mean, we had so much material. So we probably had easily 100 hours of footage. And now think about that. This is all great conversation, wonderful anecdotes. And now you cut it all down and you make a movie and you get about 4.5 hours, because that's as much as the DVD and the Blu-ray can hold in terms of, having a good picture and sound and not, picture degradation and all that stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That's why we keep it at 4.5 hours. I mean, I've delivered like 5.5 hour, rough cuts, and I just have to slice that down by an hour, and it's the most painful thing possible. But the good thing is that the additional footage I can put in part 2, plus I have all this other material that we never even got to. So I started putting that together with the intention of doing a 2 when we just shut down completely. So we probably put half of the film together before we shot any additional footage. And after taking a very long break because of COVID, I started doing interviews for In Search of Tomorrow, as well as more In Search of Darkness interviews. And I was able to get 23 new interviews, 15 new faces. And while we would have loved to have gotten more, I think I'm very proud of the amount of material, brand new material that we got on top of the brand new material that no one had seen before from the original cuts, if you think about it. So In Search of Darkness 2 is 4.5 hours of brand new footage. There's not one repeated moment or scene or discussion. But I thought very long and hard about, how do I do this? I can't make a brand new movie because I just don't have the material or the time to do it. But if I want to make this into a series, why not bring all these amazing conversations over with, some new structure to it in terms of, actors talking about their own careers, or, actors talking about acting, or, unmade projects. I mean, that's all material that I had sitting there. And what a crime if it just sat in a vault and never got seen. Right. So
exactly.
It all came together, I think, pretty well. And even though we don't have a lot of, some people had new interviews, Cassandra Peterson or, Kane Hodder, certain folks I was able to get new interviews for. But for the other ones, I totally stand by that. It's great material that just had yet to be seen. And it makes the entire series feel like, it's now a 9-hour movie and counting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and because, it seemed to happen very quick. Like, In Search of Darkness comes out, then all of a sudden the announcement, part 2 is coming. I'm like, wow, that's really, really quick. So it makes a lot of sense.
We turned each movie around in 1 year.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, I'm not going to lie.
And it's painful, but it's fun.
I'm not going to lie. As soon as I saw Cassandra Peterson pop up on the screen, I almost fainted. I absolutely adore her. So I am very jealous.
She's wonderful. She's wonderful. She's everything you would expect her to be. And it was really kind of fun, too, because when we did her In Search of Darkness 2 interview, it was the first time she was out of her house to do anything other than go to the grocery store.
Oh, wow.
And so what I found with a lot of these first interviews that we were doing over I would say July and August of last year, which is cutting it close when we delivered this movie in October.
Yeah.
But they just wanted to chat. They wanted human companionship.
Right.
We'd film the interview, but afterwards we'd sit and chat for another 45 minutes because we wanted to see another human. So it was pretty fun.
I swear, toward the end of summer, early fall of 2020, everyone was so desperate to get out of the house. It was insane.
Well, Clancy Brown, he's just like, I'm sorry I look like Santa Claus, but, it's my COVID beard. I'm like, thanks for coming out. And Clancy, too, he sat with us for, practically 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then I had to politely shoo him away because I had another interview. He's like, oh, okay, no problem. You got other people. All right, sure. I guess I'll go now. He's the best. He's the best.
That's really awesome, though. I mean, watching him in the documentary, you can tell he's very talkative, and he kind of has that relaxed, kind of fun energy about him.
Very engaging, very charismatic, very intelligent, very interested in the material. You know, he was. I can't wait for you guys to see him in Search of Tomorrow, because, you know, he talks about, you know, Dune and Blade Runner and Buckaroo Banzai and, you know, gleam in his eye as he talks about it. Star Wars. I mean, he's in The Mandalorian. He's done, you know, voice work, and so he just loves all that stuff.
Man, a man of many trades, it sounds like.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. So with all these people that you have talked to and brought back for the interviews, who has been like one of your most favorite people that you have interviewed for these documentaries?
No, I don't like to pick favorites, but well, I really don't, you know. But I find there are certain people, like I like to point out Caroline Williams as a great example of someone I just didn't know very well. You know, I mean, I knew her work, but I didn't know her as a person, and I wasn't quite sure what her interview was going to be like. And she just demonstrated herself to be the ultimate film geek, and very articulate and intelligent and wonderful insight and takes on just the genre and the concepts, and just unexpected directions I never expected to go with her. And so that was one of the, you know, quite enjoyable interviews. You know, Andre Gower, you know, who was the kid, you know, the lead kid in Monster Squad.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's just so fun and engaging, and he's a wealth of knowledge. Alex Winter, you know, I mean, I'm just going to now just go down the list, so you have to wait for me to talk about 65 people. But yeah, like Alex Winter, I had interviewed Alex Winter for The Hollywood Reporter, because I did a anniversary piece on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and I got to talk to Alex and Keanu Reeves and Stephen Herrick, the director.
Wow.
And I had never met Alex either. And, you know, I did not think he was, you know, Bill from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but it's hard to separate him from that persona.
Right. And
I was so impressed that he was so very, again, articulate and incredibly intelligent, and a great speaker, wealth of knowledge and passion, because he's just a film geek too. And, you know, just keeps on talking and is happy to do it. And just all these, everyone was just very down to earth. And once they, the thing is, we arrange all of these interviews ourselves, in that we don't go to a convention or we don't go to a junket and catch what we can. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not how we do it. You know, we schedule these things where we say, please come and sit down with us for an hour. And once people realize that they've got a forum to chit chat for a while, they do. And sometimes they go 2 hours, sometimes they go more. And they're happy to talk about things that aren't necessarily their own projects. They're happy to just geek out. And that's what's so fun about this whole experience, and real fun for me.
Exactly. That's one of the things that I like so much about this documentary is it's just people sitting and talking. You know, it doesn't feel stiff. It doesn't feel like rehearsed. It's just people talking, and I love that.
And it's refreshing to hear that, like, these people who are responsible for these films are also fans of the genre.
Exactly, and they talk about other films. I love that.
Yeah, very much so. They love what is real fun is once you start going down tangents, you never know where it's going to go, and these people who have told many of the same stories over and over and over and over again really find it refreshing to be able to sort of go down these tangents about random things or other films or other thoughts or other experiences. And you'd be surprised at how many they're like, oh gosh, I haven't thought about this in quite some time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've ever said this. And then they just deliver some tale, and I just sit there and, you know, I'm like Mr. Burns with my fingers, like, yes, I got some great material.
All right, so I gotta ask, what is your favorite 80s horror film?
Oh, that's just uncool to ask. You can't make me pick one. I really can't. 5. I mean, top 5.
Round it out.
What I like to do, I mean, I can pick all obscure and eccentric choices, but what I ultimately kind of do is what I find myself coming back to over and over. And a lot of them are sort of like the greatest hits. But it all kind of stems for me, even though it's not 80s horror, Halloween really sort of set me on the path of more mature. When I say mature, I mean, I was a Universal Monsters movie kid and a Godzilla kid. I mean, I just watched all that kind of stuff. And then that was the first, I saw the Amityville Horror, I saw The Omen, and I saw The Exorcist on TV when I was way too young, when they made their network debuts, or should be shown on, the Sunday night movie. And I'd sit there on my couch. I don't know where my parents were and why they let me do this. They're just like, oh, he's watching TV, so he's good to go. So here I am sitting on the couch all by myself in the darkness watching these movies with my grandmother's Afghan over my head so I could look through the little holes during the scary part and be protected. And I remember seeing these movies, and they really made quite an imprint on my brain. And but it was Halloween that really made me also, much like Star Wars, I needed to deconstruct it, not to be scared of it, and to understand how it was so effective. And so I'd watch that movie again and again and again to say, all right, the scare comes here, the music swells here, the sound design is here. That's how you craft a scary as fuck movie. I could curse. Sorry about that. And
you're fine. You curse all you want.
Okay. But and so after that, so you did ask me what's my, I always go to American Werewolf in London because that's the one movie where that really put me on a deep dive of like, how did they do that? How did Rick Baker and his team do that? How did John Landis craft such an entertaining movie that was scary as hell, but entertaining and fun as well? And I would study that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I just live everything from The Shining to Phantasm 2 to and Phantasm 1. But I love Phantasm 2 because it was like Phantasm 2 was Phantasm with a bigger budget.
With a budget, exactly.
Yeah. And more of sort of a kick-ass action movie versus a scary movie and surreal film. And I always loved that film. I love Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's, vampire film, vampire Western. I just thought that was amazing. Evil Speak. It's always one of those, it's just like they beat him up and now he's going to, hail Satan through his Commodore 64.
Yeah.
And, get revenge on all his, bullies that deserve it. It's so many films. And let me see. Let me try to pick another one out of the hat. The funny thing is that I've covered so many, and there's so many that haven't even made the cut, where my mind goes blank because it's like all in front of me, and I'm like, wait, what do I like? I like them all for different reasons. Halloween 3. I mean, I stand by Halloween 3.
Yes.
And I also stand by the what if of Halloween 3. But I remember when that came out, I missed it. I missed it in the theater, but I remember it being advertised. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, Season of the Witch. What can this be? And I didn't even think about, is Michael Myers in it or not? I just said, well, this seems like a new direction for a third film. But I never got to see it. And then everyone said it's awful and it bombed. And so I just kind of like ignored it for a little bit, saying, oh, everyone says stay away from Halloween 3. It's terrible. But, my curiosity got the best of me. And then I'm just like, oh, wait, this is, even though the word anthology didn't come to mind, I'm like, this is like an anthology movie for the Halloween series. He's trying to go in a different direction. I recognize that. Wait a minute. There's like mind control and robots and kids melting brains and masks. This is just wonderful. And, and it had, the John Carpenter theme music was really good for that. He created a whole new score for that, or co-created it. And last I'll say is, Creepshow.
Of
I don't know
course.
if that's 5, but yeah, Creepshow has always been one of my all-time favorites. The Crate is my favorite among all the stories, but I love, My Father's Day Cake. I mean, just every story has something to offer, and I was so happy to be able to get Tom Savini for In Search of This Part 2, and I was finally able to land Adrienne Barbeau for In Search of Tomorrow. So I suspect we'll be seeing some Adrienne Barbeau in Search of Darkness Part 3.
Wow. Well, that
You heard it here first.
that actually kind of segues into my next question. What can we expect from Part 3? I'm super jazzed about this, and I know 1 and 2 are very, very big right now. So what can we expect from the third installment?
I can give you a bit of a tease about it because my mind is very much on In Search of Tomorrow right now. I mean, we're still in the middle of interviews for it, and so I'm very focused on that. So we're in pre-production right now. Not even pre-production. We're in development on In Search of Darkness 3. But the idea is, so many people have said, even after 2, there's so much more. I'd love to see a 3. And because the response was so positive and overwhelming, we're like, well, we clearly can definitely go. Because there are hundreds of movies that came out in the 80s. Of horror movies. And there are many mainstream ones that didn't even that were theatrical that I still have yet to cover. But the idea is the sort of the dark underbelly of a lot of the straight to video stuff, a lot of the really indie stuff, a lot of the real down and dirty stuff, but mixed with a lot of the favorites and a lot of the fan favorites that we still haven't even covered yet. But I really, it's very important. Robin Block has built a community around these documentaries. We're not just movies that come out, once a year or however often. He's built a whole Discord community for In Search of Darkness and In Search of Tomorrow, horror community, a sci-fi community that just loves to get together all the time. We weekly watch parties and interviews, and people get to talk about their favorite movies. And the idea is to integrate our audience and their voices and what you want to hear and see in the next film. And we're going to sort of incorporate a lot more of the, here's our favorite stuff. Please, please, please put this in. And that's going to be a very big driving force for Part 3. And Part 2, we did that quite a bit too. We had a survey to, fill in the survey and a pick your favorite survey for a handful of I think 10, 12, 15 films. And based on the response to that, every film that was asked for in the top 12 made it into the movie and then some. And it's like by the fans for the fans. The horror community is this wonderful community, incredibly enthusiastic, and this is a movie for the whole community, for all of us. I mean, I'm a fan as well. So that's what I could tell you about Part 3 is that it's definitely going to be involving everyone in terms of their interests and their desires and their hopes and dreams, and so much more to cover.
I mean, well, I can honestly say that our show's mantra is by the fans, for the fans. So we very much appreciate you saying that and everything you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, we firmly believe it. I mean, we're a very small company. It's not like we're some company that's like, ooh, horror's big right now. Let's do a horror documentary and cash in. This always started as a crowdfunded project by fans who love this stuff. We've kept the company, Creator VC, very small. The response has been incredibly strong, and we're more than happy to keep on doing this and tackle other decades in Search of Darkness 90s and beyond. These are all planned and in the works because people seem to really love this structure, this kind of movie. And we're happy to do it because it brings us great joy to get such a wonderful response and to make the movies that we want to see.
But that's something that I truly do admire what you and your team are doing with it, because as you're watching this documentary, you can tell that, like you said, it's not just something that you guys are just trying to cash in because it's a big hot topic right now. You guys are enjoying this, and you can tell, and the people who you're talking to are enjoying this. And it's something that does bring that horror community and, that sci-fi community, it sounds like. It's bringing everybody together, and it's something that everyone can talk about. And that's something that, to me, very much reads that making this film, you guys care about what the fans want, and you guys are actually taking the time to do that. And to me, that's everything. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you recognize that. But I have to say, absolutely. I mean, it's like, especially as we progress to an In Search of Darkness Part 3, there are so many films that we haven't tackled yet. And if at this point we haven't hit the film that you want, by all means, we got to ask you what you want, and we still will never be able to accommodate all of them. But it's got to be a driving factor, because there's so many great films out there. I'm past what I want now. There's still films that I want in the next movie. I mean, there are films that I wanted in the first movie and the second movie that didn't quite make it, and that was just because I didn't have the time or the space for it, or didn't, in my opinion, wasn't robust enough to qualify. But that doesn't mean I don't want it in the movie. Try again in Part 3. But if I have this ultimate killer list from the fans saying, please do this, please do that, and they're from the most eclectic to the most well-known films, but we just still haven't covered it, I'm happy to use that as a roadmap. You know.
So as much as I love horror films, I also do love my sci-fi films. So I'm seeing, no, I can't. I'm seeing the trailers and the clips for In Search of Tomorrow, and I'm seeing like stuff of like my personal favorite RoboCop and the Christopher Reeve Superman films. What's the status on that one? Because I personally can't wait.
Well, we're making it right now. I'm still doing interviews. We had to, like I said, had to take a year ago, we crowdfunded it, and it was quite a successful crowdfunder, and that really told us that there's a definite desire for this film, and wanted to structure it just like the In Search of Darkness movies, because if it ain't broke, we don't fix it, and it really lends itself well to these movies, and so we've lined up 75 plus people. Which means that we have to interview 75 plus people. And so, like I said, there was a bit of a delay because of COVID, and we're doing, and this is doing everything we can to have safe interviews, because a lot of the folks who've done these movies are older now. And the last thing we want to do is put anyone in harm's way just to get an interview. Myself, my crew included, talent included. That being said, we're doing a lot of very COVID-safe interviews. We're doing a lot of outdoor interviews. And I'm starting to script it. I'm starting to assemble it as I am continuing to get interviews. I'd say about 60% through interviews and counting. So, I mean, I've got 4 interviews lined up next week, and I just did an interview yesterday. It's just a lot, many interviews, and this is the stuff I love to do. And some of them are in person, and some of them, if they're out of town, I'm doing it with a local camera crew, and Skype. And they said, I mean, I sat down virtually yesterday with Corey D. Williams, who's son of Lando, Billy D. Williams' son. He also, of course, in addition to being the son of Billy D. Williams, he's in Return of the Jedi, and so he's got quite a unique experience and point of view, being the son of Billy D. Williams, but also being part of this whole Star Wars universe. From the fandom to the production. And, he's in Atlanta. And so I sat down at my desk in Los Angeles and chatted for 2 hours and had this wonderful conversation. And I can't wait to include him and everybody else in this conversation.
I can tell that Gov is just like geeking out right now over the thought of this film right
I have 2 words to say, 2 words that we talked about among many, many, many other things. Blue Harvest.
Blue Harvest.
Maybe that's cryptic unless you're you're a uber geek. You can look it up.
I was about to say, I'm going to have to chew on that one a little
bit. And it doesn't mean you're any less of a Star Wars fan. But look up Blue Harvest, and we got to talk about that too.
Blue Harvest?
Yeah.
Yep.
As in the working title.
Should I just tell you, or should I make you guys work for it?
Well, Blue Harvest as in like the working title for, what was it, Return of the Jedi?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it was when they shot in Yuma, Arizona. They did it under the title of Blue Harvest, so they could stay under the radar.
Yeah.
But it was pretty comical because within days you have Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and George Lucas and Harrison Ford having pizza in some small podunk town in Yuma, Arizona. They figured people might figure out pretty quickly that Jedi is filming there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, if the three of them are walking around, yeah.
It's a little bit of a hint.
Yeah, and Corey D. Williams, who's a musician, he brought a friend of his. He was originally going to be a stand-in, and then he ended up being a stunt double and one of the characters on Jabba's barge. And but he's a musician, and so he brought a friend of his who ended up being one of the Gamorrean guards, and they would jam at their motel at night, and everyone would hang out and listen to their music. And
oh wow,
it's fun stories.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
there you go.
We thank you so very much for taking the time out of your, it sounds like a really busy schedule, to come and talk to a couple of nerds behind a microphone.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I mean, you guys are interested and you care about this stuff, and I appreciate your interest. Absolutely.
Well, we definitely appreciate all the work that you guys are doing and all the effort you guys are putting into it. So we thank you.
I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve. I mean, literally, it's like I cannot complain. I've got a wonderful job. It's flexible. We have this team that's a worldwide team. I mean, Robin Block is in the UK. My editor, Sam Way, who's an amazing editor. Kudos to Sam Way, who puts these 4.5-hour movies together and makes them fly. I edit it with him, through the computer, essentially, so we have a working relationship that I don't even have to be there, and we can get all this stuff done. And so I'm really proud of everyone who works for Creator VC to get this done. It's definitely a team effort, but we're all geeks at heart, and we have the best job in the world. We really do.
Awesome. That's awesome. I can't even begin to tell you.
Maybe not the best job in the world. That might be an exaggeration. But listen, in comparison to other people who have the best job in the world, we're in that club as far as I'm concerned.
Right. If it's something that you love doing and you're happy doing it, then go for it. That's my thought.
That's the truth. It's very much the truth. Do the things that you love that make you happy, and that's my generic. You go get them, Tiger. Advice is like, it's like we all have to do things that we don't want to do. Mm-hmm. But if you have a dream and you have a hobby and you have goals in life, you just got to keep on working at it. And you got to expect that things can take time, but you got to get out there. You got to work on it. You got to make time for it. And at a certain point, it'll start paying off for you. If not financially, then with the reward of being able to get it done.
Hey there, it's Quinn from Scarifyer. You ever have one of those days where you're out on the lake and the sun's going down, gazing into the eyes of that special someone, and then you realize, I brought my machete, but no hockey mask? Well, if you're in a rush to make a killing, head over to 13X Studios and get your very own custom hockey mask. Mask creator Rick Stizinski takes a hands-on approach to every order to create the perfect mask to your specialized needs. Why would you settle for red triangles when you can shop an assortment of original styles and colors? Rick's clientele includes Nightmare Toys, Kevin Smith, and Kane Hodder. Head online to follow 13X Studio on all social media platforms. Then go over to 13X Studios on Etsy to put in your custom order today. Don't get caught with your mask off while devising your next decapitation. Go to 13xstudios.com.
Scarifyer.